Hey everyone, I was coming in here today with a special guest. Have you ever wondered about the peace of mind that comes with having a solid estate plan? Well, our guest today is going to help get ready to explore the ins and outs of estate planning with our expert guests. First of all, my name is Sherry Beery, and I'm with the Live with Purpose Health Coaching, and I'm so excited to have Kristen Marks here with us today. She is the founder of My Pink Lawyer and has worked with women and families for over 25 years, helping them with wills, trusts, and estate planning needs. Kristen, this is why I love Kristen, because she understands that many women often feel intimidated or overwhelmed regarding legal matters. And this is why it's become part of Kristen's mission to empower and inspire women to get organized and plan ahead to protect yourself and your families. And I love that Kristen doesn't overcomplicate things. I've worked with her personally, my husband and I have, and it was such an easy process, even though it felt very overwhelming. But Kristen was with us every step of the way and has really given our family a peace of mind. So I want to welcome Kristen. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Sherry. Thanks for having me.
It's so exciting to have you here today. And I know this, we're coming off of January into February. A lot of us have New Year's resolutions or New Year's goals, thinking maybe we've just been with family and friends. And we're starting to talk about certain things like maybe we have elderly parents that we are taking care of, but also starting to think about what are our kids going to do if something happens to us. And so I want to go off first with this first question that I have for you is if you can explain what estate planning is and why it's important.
So, estate planning is just nothing more than organizing your affairs, Sherry, so that if twofold, you become disabled and unable to manage your own financial affairs during your lifetime, you have people in place legally who can take that over for you and act in your best interests on your behalf. And then the second component of estate planning is organizing your affairs in such a way so that when you do pass on, everything that you have worked hard during your lifetime to build, which maybe compared to other people is not as much as, some other folks, but it doesn't matter. What you have built is important to you. It's important to your family. And you want to make sure we have a written roadmap and seamless transition of your assets to your loved ones when you pass away. And to the extent that we can avoid unnecessary legal hassles and unnecessary legal fees and time delays and frankly frustration and heartaches, that's what we try to do with the estate plans that we put together for our clients.
Yeah, and it's so important to have those pieces. And I think some of the things that maybe people think of, at least when I hear estate planning, I think something big and elaborate. And I'm wondering if you can break down like what are the parts of when we think about estate planning. I know we have different pieces of estate planning. So can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So one thing that at our meetings, we cover three different things, kind of three different parts. The first thing is we're going to ask you lots of questions. My team of attorneys and myself, we're going to ask you lots of questions to get a better handle on your current situation, right? Family dynamics, what you own, all of that good stuff. Then phase two, we'll dive into a more detailed discussion about what it is you might be trying to accomplish. Some clients come to us and they're very clear or think that they're very clear on what they want to see happen. Other clients come to us and they really have no idea. And that's okay too, because just by having the discussion, asking lots of questions, it provides clarity for clients about what they are wanting to accomplish. And then phase three is the attorneys are helping you come up with solutions to get you from point A, where you're starting from today, to point B, what you're trying to accomplish. So once we get to phase 3, which is what I think your question is, then we look at, okay, the big picture. What do you currently own? What is the plan, the simplest plan that we can put into place to get those different assets that you have to the folks that you want on the terms that you want? So oftentimes an estate plan will include things like probate avoidance vehicles, right? Who wants to pay who wants their family to have to pay a bunch of money to get the assets into their name when they pass away? And we have lots of tools at our disposal to avoid probate. Sometimes it's as easy as joint ownership of assets or beneficiary designations on financial accounts, or deeds. We have a special type of deed, for example, in Florida called a ladybird deed, which is the equivalent of signing a beneficiary form for real estate in Florida. We have trusts that are available. So we have lots of different tools to avoid probate of assets. So that's one component of an estate planning solution that we put together. But all of our estate planning solutions also include documents that cover you in the event of your incapacity during your lifetime. Things like your financial durable powers of attorney, your medical powers of attorney. Do you want to include a living will? Are you willing to be an organ donor? And what are your final wishes as regards burial, cremation? So all of those documents we also include, but oftentimes the bulk of our meeting is really covering what is going to be the simplest transition of assets to your loved ones when you die, and also just the terms of that transition. You might have beneficiaries that you're like, nope, I'm cool. They're adults. They're not disabled. Let's just give it to them outright. And other times we have clients that have younger children or disabled children or children or other loved ones that have issues that need to be addressed, and it wouldn't be appropriate to leave assets right now outright to them. So we want to put guardrails in place over their inheritance. And so those are all things that we discuss at an estate planning meeting.
Yeah, this is one thing that you really walked us through this. This was, we had an idea when we came to our meeting that we want to just be able to make this as easy as we can for our kids, our adult children, so that it doesn't mean that they're spending hours or things are tied up, financial assets are tied up to be able to pay for the house. Who continues the house payment after we leave, right? Who pays the electric bill? It's all of those things that you just think, my kids can take care of that. But not necessarily. We've seen it with families and friends who think, oh, I have a financial power of attorney. And when that person dies, that becomes void.
That's
And
right.
that
They
was
don't realize that.
yeah, it was a really big surprise for one of our family members. And it becomes more of a conversation of how do we get to avoid that? Are there any other common pitfalls that you see when you have clients that are maybe potential clients calling you after it's too late, that you're like, if they just would have had this or that? Is there any kind of couple of scenarios you want to share there?
Sure. So one scenario that we tend to get a couple of calls a month on is on the transition of real estate. So here are a couple of issues that I see that come up. Misconceptions of clients. I have a lot of clients that, or even just people that call the office that say, hey, mom died. She has a will. She's leaving everything to me in her will. And I just went to put her house on the market. and they're telling me that I don't have title to it, but I showed them this will that says I'm supposed to get everything. A lot of people mistakenly think, Sherry, that a will magically avoids probate and magically passes on your assets after you pass away, which is not true.
Mhm.
What a will does is it says, if there are any assets that need to be probated, my estate, the will provides your written instructions from the grave to a probate judge about who you want to put in charge and what you want that person to do, who you want to receive your assets. But it doesn't magically happen. That person in charge still has to go and open a probate with the court, be formally appointed in that role as personal representative or executor. And then there's a myriad of other things that need to happen along the probate process. So that's one common pitfall. A lot of people think a will avoids probate. That's not true. The second common pitfall I see, or misconception that I see with a will, is folks think that a will controls everything. So in other words, hey, I have a will, it leaves everything to me. Why is my why is my stepfather getting my mom's bank accounts, for example, or her house, for example? Well, because a will, remember, only applies to assets that have to go through probate. If assets are passing outside of probate through other mechanisms like co-ownership or beneficiary designations, that takes priority over the will. Another pitfall that I see is folks don't understand that there are other laws on the books that might override what you are spelling out in your will. For example, a person's homestead property, their home, if they are married when they die, a surviving spouse has guaranteed inheritance rights to that home, unless they've waived it in writing during the person's lifetime. So even if we're talking about a couple that's been separated for years, it doesn't matter. We still have the legal relationship of a marriage, which will override perhaps what that client was trying to do. So that's another area of discussion that we have with our clients, is once we know what they're trying to do, then we can advise them, this is what you can and cannot do with your assets because of this law that's on the Florida books.
Yeah.
So that's another misconception
Yeah.
that we see.
I love these that you're giving examples of, because you're really reiterating the importance of having a well thought out estate plan, because it's not only going to help with the get clarity, but it's also, I would imagine, minimizing cost here. And I'm wondering is, some people may think, oh, it costs so much to work with an estate attorney. It's that whole objection of the cost versus investment, of investing in this and in the very beginning of having a well thought out plan versus leaving this for your estate to just figure out and all the family members. I wonder if you want to speak on the whole investment cost thing that people can kind of get. What's the benefit of coming and working with an estate attorney from the get-go versus not working with someone and getting caught in those loophole of probate and long attorney fees?
So I can tell you, doing this almost 29 years now, that I would say in 95% of the cases, a family is always going to save much more money having done pre-planning in advance than having to deal with probates, which in Florida, $10,000, not unusual. Our plans don't come anywhere close to that, Sherry. but we're talking 10,000, sometimes more if people are fighting, right?
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
a cost that usually has to be borne up front, then reimbursed. So that requires somebody fronting
Yeah.
that money in your family to do that.
Yeah.
And so we do everything on a flat fee basis in our office. So you do pay an initial consultation fee, and then during the meeting, once we know what we're trying to accomplish, then we can quote you a flat fee for the services. So there are no surprises. What you see is what you get. Oftentimes, there's more than one good solution on the table for folks. And then we can talk about pros and cons of different planning options and flat fees
Mhm.
associated with different planning options. And hey, you know what? There, at the end of the day, I always tell clients, and this is perfectly valid, a perfectly valid mindset is it really is not going to be your problem when you die, right? Because you're gone.
Mhm. Mhm.
Most of my clients, they do want to make it as easy as possible for their loved ones. Um, and that usually involves avoiding probate,
Mhm.
in some manner.
Yeah.
But I have other clients that are like, you know what? Uh, Maybe this plan in a perfect world is the best plan for us. But frankly, it's the more expensive planning option right now that we've proposed, and it just doesn't fit in their budget. So we
Mhm.
always want to be respectful of that. And I
Mhm.
always help clients feel good about their decision that, hey, in a perfect world, yes, this plan over here ticks all of the boxes. But if you're willing to compromise on a couple of aspects of your plan, then we can go with this other less
Mhm.
expensive option right now. And you just know there are a couple of trade-offs, but it's still a very solid plan for your family and much better than having no plan at all.
Right.
Because,
Right.
I remind folks, look, the planning that you do, it's not for you because you're not going to be here. It's really for your loved ones because they are the
Mhm.
ones that are going to have to live with the decisions that you chose to make or not make for their
Mhm.
benefit when you had the opportunity to do so.
Yeah. I think it is so key here to think about like the gift that you're giving those, the legacy that you're leaving your children or grandchildren beyond like the piece about probate. I know that is a big thing. We've experienced that in our own family and see what the difference is between having a plan, as you speak of, and not having a plan. And so these are such great conversations to have. And the other thing I know that I'm really taking away from you is, and after working with you, doing this, is that everybody's experience and everybody's situation is different. And that's why it's so important to sit down and have a conversation with someone like you who can walk you through exactly what it is that you need and not feel overwhelmed in the process. That is one thing I will say, that after having this experience with you, it was really easy to see it as step by steps and not like here's all your homework. You were so good at giving us little bites of homework at a
Little
time.
bites, that's right.
Yes, and then
There's a
just
lot that
taking
we can
it.
do, but there's some things that you need to do. And so
Yeah.
we try
Yeah.
not to make it overwhelming.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you certainly didn't. And that was the thing. And I wanted to bring you into my whole community because this is such a key piece of taking, I call it the invisible load that kind of stays in our head of all the things that we need to do, especially as women. And one of these things may be estate planning that's on your mind, that you realize when you have it in place, the relief that you feel of having it all in place. So it is one of those stressors in our lives, whether we want to give it credit or not. So if it is one for anybody listening here, I want to encourage you to check out Kristen's website, Kristen, do you want to share a little bit about what's there and where people
Sure.
can find you?
Sure. So our website is mypinklawyer.com, and we are an estate planning firm, all women, and we're licensed in Florida. So we can work with Florida residents all over. There's lots of free resources on there, videos and reports and planning guides that you can download for free. And I also wrote a book on the 10 most common estate planning mistakes that women make that you can order for free on the website at either mypinklawyer.com, or you can go to pinklawyerbook.com and put in your information, and we'll pop that book in the mail to you for free as well.
Oh, such great resources. I've used several of them. I've handed them to friends. I've referred to clients. So thank you, Kristen, for sharing with us today. Is there any parting words you want to share with the group here?
No, just, I mean, it really is the greatest gift that you can give your family is getting your affairs in order. And even if you're not ready to pull the trigger on meeting with us or another estate planning advisor, you can start by at least getting your own important papers organized. In my experience, especially if you're married, there's one spouse that takes the lead on that. In my family, that's me. So I have to get very organized because my husband, if I wasn't, he'll be clueless anyway. But at least if I can document a written roadmap for him,
Mm,
this is where we have our investments, our
mhm,
accounts.
mhm.
These are who our advisors are. These
Yes.
are passwords. This is
Yeah.
how we pay the bills. This is what bills we have. All of that. That doesn't take an attorney to do. And it is a
Right.
little tedious to get together, but my goodness, if you've been through a death in your family at all,
Mhm,
you know what
mhm.
a nightmare it can be to try to track down financial information. So
Yeah.
just try to get it organized the best that you can and let your family know where you're keeping those documents.
Yeah, yeah, it's so important. I'm glad you pointed that out. Passwords to accounts, all of those things. And it is awful to be in that situation and not know. So what you're sharing too, I'm that person in our household too. And I pulled my husband in to know where all, so he knows where that is. And that's such an important piece where people can start. And like you mentioned, don't even have to work with an attorney to get that started. But it is awesome to see all the resources that Kristen has provided at My Pink Lawyer. So thank you, Kristen, for joining us today. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out and just get started with one thing. That's what I always say, small steps. That's what it takes. So thanks again. Thanks, Kristen.
Sherry.